Hey, hi, how are you guys? So today, in today's video, we are going to discuss the peak of Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic, and who wins. So it all depends on the surfaces that they play. It all also depends on the age of the respective players, and also the different conditions, the journey in the whole slam. So how much time they have spent on the court, and what were the opponents prior to them facing each other, because these players usually face each other in semifinals or finals, right? So the whole journey also matters. So if a player is tired and has spent more time on the court, then definitely it impacts the performance. Also, the injuries have played a part on their careers as well. So because these three players have different surfaces, so Federer has the favorite surface as the grass. So his best performances have come on Wimbledon. Then we have Nadal at the French Open, of course. And then we have Djokovic, whose surface is Australian Open's plexi cushion. So I think that is the surface that Djokovic really likes. And we can see that in his performances as well. Even with against Federer or Nadal, he has performed really well. And he has mostly won, all the matches. And we have some stats here, so we'll talk about those stats as well. But before that, I'd like to tell you about few of the matches. I hope you have seen those matches already. But if not, I will recommend those matches to you, and I'll tell you what to watch in those matches. One thing that I want to mention here is that watching highlights and watching a complete match, the full replay is a different thing. And I would recommend personally to watch the complete video till the end and watch the full replay of each of those matches, just so to understand the depth of greatness of these players and the situation, because highlights and the scoreline usually don't tell you the whole story. So I'd recommend you to watch the whole replay of all the matches, and it's available on YouTube, so you can definitely go ahead and watch those matches. And what I've tried to analyze in all those matches, as even though these players have different best surfaces like grass and the Australian Open hard court, as well as the clay in the French Open, but I've just tried to analyze the point where these three players were playing at their peak against each other. So all these matches that I'm going to talk about are between Federer or Nadal or Djokovic. So and these all matches, of course, have been close, and there has been very little to choose between the players. So let me recommend you those matches first, and then we'll talk about the different stats and discuss more on these things. So the first match that I want to talk about is the Federer versus Djokovic match of the US Open 2011. Now, even though Federer was past his prime, I would say after 2007, once he got injured and had that glandular fever, and post that his speed decreased a little bit, his movement decreased a little bit, even though his shots were still good. We know that his backhand also was under scrutiny for some time, but then I think. Of course, with age, those shots tend to get a bit difficult for you, because the reflexes are not that smooth. So I think Federer's prime, I would say, was till 2007. After 2008, it took him some time to get back to his best, but even that best was not his best. Actually, it was close to his best, and that this is what we will talk about, because when Federer was in his prime in like 2004 to 2007, Nadal and Djokovic were not in their primes. They were just budding players, they were growing players. So we cannot view their best tennis in any of those matches, but definitely I'll try to bring that into context as well. So the Federer versus Djokovic match in 2011 was a great match in the US Open, where Federer was two sets to love up. He was playing really well, hitting the ball really cleanly, and then suddenly Djokovic found something, and then in the third and the fourth sets, he was playing really well, and it was quite a good match with good rallies, good aggressive tennis from both ends, and you could see that Federer was really playing well. Now, keep in mind that Djokovic in 2011 was the best player, okay, and he was best player by far. So, for Federer to be able to come close to Djokovic that year would have definitely meant that Federer was playing his best tennis or near to his best tennis as well. and that's what happened. So in the French Open, Federer was able to beat Djokovic in the semifinals, and in the US Open semifinals as well. He played a very, very good match, but came up short just in the end. Now we all know that Federer had match points in those in that match. Federer had a couple of match points on his own serve, but then he sort of panicked, and Djokovic hit that wonderful forehand winner on the return in one of those match points, and then the things got changed drastically, and Djokovic was able to come out as a victor in the end. So that match is very good match to watch in terms of the quality as well as in terms of the movement. So Federer was also moving well in that match. It was a hard court, so definitely Federer and Djokovic, both players play really well on hard court. So I would really recommend this that match to all of you guys. So do watch the 2011 US Open semi-final between Federer and Djokovic. The next match that I'm going to talk about is Nadal versus Djokovic twice. So one of the matches was, of course, in the Australian Open 2012. That was also, I think, one of the longest matches in history of tennis, and a very, very good match, I would say, wherein Djokovic had decided that he's going to rally with Nadal. He's not going to play that aggressive, but and somehow he's going to beat Nadal just by rallying and playing defensive, like Nadal does all the time. And eventually he was able to beat Nadal that way. And I think the whole credit goes to Djokovic in terms of his movement on that surface, because he's able to slide very well on that surface. And later on, if you see in that match, once he lost the first set, in the second set, Djokovic started playing a bit aggressive, even though still he was really happy to rally with Nadal, but then he just notched his game up a little bit, and he was able to beat Nadal in the end. A very good match, and of course a match which shows you the mental strength of Nadal, who was completely down and out in the fourth set, but somehow I don't know from where he found the strength, and he was able to win that set in the tie break. And the fifth set as well, Nadal was up a break in the fifth set, but then Djokovic came back, and it was a very great match, one of the epics that you could watch. So I would recommend that as the second match. And all these matches that I'm talking about are the matches where both the players are almost playing their perfect tennis, their best tennis. So the quality of these matches is going to be really good. So if you have not watched these matches, I would recommend please go ahead and watch these two matches. And the third match between Nadal and Djokovic, this third match is the French Open 2013. So I've already talked about that match in my previous videos. So do go ahead and watch that match. That is also available on YouTube. And that was also, I think, the best performance of Djokovic against Nadal on clay in the French Open of 2013. Even though Djokovic didn't manage to win that match, but it was a five-setter, and Djokovic was up a break in the fifth set. But then Nadal, with his mental ability and his strong, aggressive game, he was able to come back and win the match, even from there. But still, I think that match is a wonderful match to watch between the two players. The next match that I'm going to talk about is Federer versus Nadal, of course. And I think when Federer was at his peak, at his prime in 2006, there was a match, a five-setter. So some of the Masters tournaments back then used to be taking place as a five-set format. So the Rome finals was also one of those matches, and I think that's what I think most of you would have seen that match. But if not, I would recommend that match between Federer and Nadal in the Rome 2006 finals. That was also a five-setter, and I think Federer has played his best clay court tennis against Nadal in that match, because Federer's backhand was really good and his forehand was lethal. Federer did have two match points even in that match, and I mean, as an irony, what can we say? He was hitting his forehand really well, but on those two match points, he made errors with those two forehands, and he ended up losing that match in the tie break. So I think that is one of the matches where Federer has actually came the closest to beating Nadal on a clay court in a five-set match, having those two match points. And Nadal was also playing well. So why I say that Nadal was also close to his peak in 2006 clay court season, because even though he didn't have a lot of weapons, as a player, he didn't have the serve and volley, and also a few of his shots were not that good. Like the backhand was an okay backhand, but it was not as good as it is today. So Nadal has evolved as a player in the years after that, but still Nadal was near to his best because one thing is that those other shots that he didn't have did not impact much on clay. That's the first point. And the second point is that Nadal's speed was definitely better those days than it is now. So Nadal was not giving a single point away in those days, and he was just able to run for each ball in each rally. And it was really difficult to finish a single point against him because such was his speed and such was his intensity and strength for the whole 5 sets. So I think that is why we can say that Nadal was near to his peak even then on clay. So such is his dominance on clay that even then he was still around at his peak, even though he was growing, still growing and still budding as a player. So I would say that was a very, very good match, and Federer's probably the best performance he has played against Nadal on clay. So do watch that match. Then the last match that I would recommend is, of course, the Wimbledon 2008, which many pundits and experts and fans call it as the best match ever to be played on a tennis court. So Federer versus Nadal in 2008, as you guys might have seen, was a wonderful 5 set match, and it was the match where Nadal proved to be, for him, it proved to be third time lucky, and he won the Wimbledon finally, beating Federer under lights. It was really dark, and the play had to be stopped a lot of times due to the rain, and that is why that match it ended up going for like 6 hours or so, with the delays, of course. And it was a great match, great performance. Even though I would say that Federer was not at his peak because he was coming back from an injury, first of all, and secondly, he was beaten comprehensively in the French Open of 2008 by Nadal, and the effects of those that loss, the effects of that loss were of course with on in Federer's mind, and he was not able to play freely for the first 1.5 sets, I would say. And Nadal was playing really well. He was full of energy. He was looking, as a man on a mission, and he played his best tennis. His backhand had improved a lot in that tournament. He also had won the Queens tournament just prior to that Wimbledon as a warm up. He had beaten Djokovic there in the finals. So I think Nadal was playing his best tennis on the grass, I would say, that year. And Federer, even though he was playing well, but he was not playing his best. And of course, with Nadal, he had that mental barrier, but still I would say he was near his best, and that is why and he was the king, of course. He was the defending champion. So I and it and he showed that in the third set and the fourth set and the fifth set. So I think that is also one of the matches. I think most of you have already seen that match, but if not, I would also recommend you guys to go ahead and see that match. All right, so now that we have talked about those matches, and once you guys see those matches, please comment on this video. How did you feel, and which match do you feel out of those matches as the best match that you have seen in your whole, history of watching tennis? So now I have a few stats in here. Now we all know that Federer's best surface is the grass on Wimbledon, and then for Nadal it's the French Open, and for Djokovic it's the Australian Open. And I have a few stats here. So when you compare Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic, the three on their own best surfaces, when we compare the stats, we can clearly see that out of these three guys, I mean, it's obvious that nobody has dominated a specific surface more than Nadal. So if you see his record, he has played against uh, he has played against Djokovic or Federer 14 times in the French Open overall, and he has won 13 of those matches. So Federer has not been able to beat Nadal so far at the French Open in his whole career. Okay, and he has played against Nadal at the French Open 6 times, and 6 times he has lost to Nadal. Okay, and that 6 times, of course, means in 6 different years, in on 6 different occasions. So and even Federer has not even taken Nadal to a fifth set in any of those matches. So you can see that how Nadal has dominated the clay court even against the best of the best. So 13 out of 14 times, and against Djokovic, 1 out of 8. So I mean, 7 out of 8 times he has won. So only once he has lost to Djokovic. That was in the 2015 quarterfinals, I think, wherein Nadal was not playing his best and Djokovic was simply at his peak. So that was the only time that Nadal has actually lost to Djokovic at the French Open. But his record is like 13 out of 14 is the most staggering record and comprehensive record. It's just totally one-sided against Nadal and Djokovic, against Federer and Djokovic combined. Now, when we talk about Federer, so Federer has played like 8 times overall against Djokovic and Nadal, and he has managed to win 4 out of 8 times. So I think it's evenly tied when you compare these three players. Now, one factor that goes against Federer is that his age. So he's not that young as Nadal and Djokovic. He's comparatively older, like 5 years older. So definitely that has been a decisive factor, I would say, because most of the times where Federer has lost to Djokovic, I mean, he has lost in 14, in 15, and in 19 recently. So all those three times Federer has been, 30 plus in terms of age, so his movement hasn't been the best, but still he has played well. But the record for the record, we all know that the stats definitely count, and if you go by the stats, it's like Federer has won 4 out of 8 times against these two guys. Now, when we talk about Djokovic in the Australian Open, Djokovic also has a very comprehensive record against Nadal and Federer, even though a lot of those matches have been close, especially against Nadal. The match in 2012 was a really close match, and even in 2017 or 2016, I think is the time where Djokovic absolutely dominated Federer in that match. So Djokovic's record against these two guys at the Australian Open is 6 out of 7 matches won. So I think only once he has lost, and that is to Federer in 2007. He lost, and remember that in that year the surface was different, so it was a much quicker surface back then, and Djokovic was still a budding player. So, but if you go by the stats, that is what they say. So 6 out of 7 times Djokovic has won, or at the Australian Open against these two guys. But still, I would say Nadal's dominance is far more because he has played far, more number of times, like 14 times, and winning 13 times. And overall, we just saw at the French Open, like 98 times out of 100 he has won on the clay. So, of course, if you talk about dominance on one specific surface, even against the best of the best, Nadal has been, unmatched in that area. And the second is Djokovic, because Djokovic at the Australian Open has also been, equally dominant and consistent as well. And then comes Federer. Now the problem for Federer is that in on a grass court, I mean, if you're a very aggressive player who has a good serve and is ready to take risks, it is really difficult to separate the best player with a player who is playing well on that day. Because if you see, if someone is playing good on the clay on one particular day, like Isner was playing really well against Nadal in 2011, the French Open, and he was up 2 sets to 1, but still he couldn't finish the match. Now, the difference is on clay, even if you're not playing well in one of the days, you can still get away with that because the court provides you, the surface provides you a lot of chances, a lot of variety that you can put in. You can imbibe more topspin on your shots. You can try different drop shots or slices, and you can basically put more balls into play. But that doesn't happen on the grass court. So let's say there are there is an aggressive player who is really playing well, like it's a Dustin Brown, or maybe Raonic for that matter, Burdick for that matter. So all these players are very aggressive players and who have a very good serve. So if their game is ticking a particular day and you are not at your best, then it's really difficult to win against these guys, because these guys will be serving well, of course, so they will be holding their serve. And then if they take like one or two risks in the tie break, or at 5 all or 6 all, or 4 all, then it really is just a matter of a few points. So you don't have that much luxury or that much the balls to keep that in play and to somehow manage to win. That doesn't happen. So when we say that somebody struggled to win, it more sounds possible on a clay court rather than a grass court, because if you're not playing well on a grass court and your opponent is playing well, it's really hard to still get away with the victory. Maybe some luck can help you out, but if the other guy is playing really well, then it's really hard to get a victory. And you have seen that the example, the proof of that is Nadal. So Nadal, even though he has played reasonably well on the grass surface, but when the other players are aggressive and they play and they serve well, I think most of the times Nadal has been defeated at the grass by players like Kyrgios or the other aggressive players. Even the players who have not managed to win against him still have given him tough fight, like Burdick and like Del Potro. And so these players play really aggressive and they serve well. So Nadal has to play his best tennis to win on grass, and that's true for all the other players. Now Federer's serve is also definitely one of the factor, because his serve, even though he's not playing well, his serve is really consistent. His first serve and as well as his second serve, and his volley is also good. So even if he's not playing well on one of those days, if luck is on his side, he can still get away, with a few points and with a few tie breaks. But nowadays, because of his speed, so he's not able to move that freely. So if he's not playing well, he definitely isn't able to win the matches against Songa and recently against Anderson, he lost in a five-set match there as well. So this is what it is, guys. I mean, these players have played well against each other, and I would recommend you to watch those matches that I just mentioned about. Those will give you an idea how these players perform their best against each other in their reasonable, peak period for that matter. And comment on this video, guys, if you are able to watch those matches. Which is your favorite match, and which match do you think has been the best performance of all these players against each other? So that maybe if I have not covered those matches, then I'll definitely try to talk about those matches in future. So guys, thanks for watching.